We're going to take what we've learned about factoring thus far, and we still got some more to learn about factoring, but hey, that's the fun of it, into solving equations. Now, there's something called the zero product property, which says that if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0, or they both equal 0. And when we're solving these polynomial and in particular quadratic equations, we set the equation equal to 0. And then we take the factors and we set each one of those equal to 0 to determine what our solution set would be. And our solution set would be either factor that makes that factor equal to 0 true. And so we can have one or more solutions to our equation. Let's get kind of a little bit specific as to what we're talking about. Now here in this first equation, 3n times n plus 2, we can see that this is already factored for us. And so I'm just going to set each factor equal to 0. So we got 3n equals 0. And we've got n plus 2 equal to 0. And we're going to solve for n as to what would make n 0, which means that either A is, let's say that 3n is equivalent to A and n plus 2 is equivalent to B. And either one or both of those equal to 0 is going to give us a true statement. Well, in this first one, 3n equals 0, we're going to divide both sides by 3, and n now equals 0 divided by 3. Well, 0 divided by any number is just going to be 0, so in this case, n equals 0. And then over here on the right side of this, n plus 2, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides, and n equals negative 2. So when n is equal to 0 or n is equal to negative 2, it's going to make that equation true. And just think about it. If I put in 0 for n, well, 3 times 0 is 0. And even though 0 plus 2 is equal to 2, well, 0 times 2 equals 0. So when n is 0, the whole equation is true. Now what about when n equals negative 2? Well, in that first factor, if I multiply 3 times negative 2, I get negative 6. But inside the parentheses, if I got negative 2 plus 2, well, negative 2 plus 2 equals 0. And although 3 times negative 2 may give me negative 6, negative 6 times 0 is 0. And so my solution set then is 0, negative 2. And that is the solution to that equation. Now in the second one down here, 80b squared minus 40b, remember one of the first things I want to do is try to determine, can I factor out greatest common factors? Well, I've got an 8 and a 40, and 40, or negative 40, is divisible by 8. 8 times 5 is 40. And then I've got a b squared and a b. So I could factor out 8b, which then leaves me with, for my second factor, b minus 5. And then we just set both factors equal to 0. Well, 8b is equal to 0. Well, if I divide 0 by any number, in this case 8, I'm just going to get 0. So b is equal to 0 in this factor. And over here, if I've got b minus 5 equals 0, we add 5 to both sides, and then b is equal to 5. And so my solution set for this is 0, 5. Now, if you wanted to substitute that back in, if I put in 0 for b, well, 0 squared is 0. 8 times 0 is 0. And then negative 40 times 0, well, that's 0. So all of it's 0 equals to 0. What about if I put in 5? Well, 5 squared is 25, and 8 times 25 is 200. But then I got a negative 40 times 5. Well, negative 40 times 5 is also 200, and 200 minus 200 is, in fact, 0. So I've gone back and substituted in and proved that my solution set is either number 0 or 5. So if x is 0 or if x is 5, it's going to make that equation true in that 0 would then equal 0. Now, in this third one, I've got x squared minus 10x. And what I need to do there, I've got to get this equation set to 0, and I can do that by adding 10x to both sides. And when we do, we've got x squared plus 10x now equaling 0. And again, I'm looking here at common factors. Well, there's an x, I got an x squared and then a 10x. So I could factor out a greatest common factor of x, which is going to leave me with x plus 10. And just like we did in these first two, I'm going to set each of these factors equal to 0. Well, x is equal to 0 on that first factor. That's pretty simple. And then we got x plus 10 equals 0. And we're going to subtract 10 from both sides. So x is equal negative 10. And so my solution set here is x negative 10. In other words, if x is either 0 or if it's negative 10, then we're going to get a true statement. Well, let's go back to our original equation, x squared equals negative 10x, and let's substitute 0 in for x. Well, let's see, 0 squared is 0 equals, well, negative 10 times 0 is also 0, so 0 equals 0. And what if we substitute negative 10 in for x? Well, negative 10 squared is 100, but then on the right side, I got negative 10 times negative 10. Well, two negatives make a positive multiplying together, so 10 times 10 is 100. Well, 100 does, in fact, equal 0. And so either of those possible solutions make that equation true. Solving polynomial and specifically quadratic equations. We'll do quite a bit of this, and it's really kind of fun.